My mom made my life hell and screamed I was cursed by society. When I asked her why she did this to me, she said, "You'll never make it without me." I didn't even cry. That was 10 months ago. Yesterday, her cult leader was caught digging up our backyard at midnight. I was 16 when I found out my mom was batshit crazy. She's always been one of those one with nature people, the type to be extremely against vaccines, shots, and non-homemade clothing, which in turn means I'm homeschooled. And instead of making a curriculum for me, giving me tests, or anything to prepare me for the real world, she just has me read a book for an hour a day. Oh, and of course, we are broke. She makes $15,000 a year. Meanwhile, she spends the measly $300 child support from dad on cigarettes, herbs, and vodka instead of, actual necessities. Up until recently, we didn't even have running water in our home. The only time I got to feel clean was when I sneaked into the public swimming pool that my friend Morgan worked at and shower there. So one day, when I downed a glass of ice water and my teeth started stinging, I gaslit myself into believing that I was just imagining things, because otherwise I'd have to talk to my mom, which meant getting wailed on for not being crafty enough to solve the problem. But after just a few weeks, my gum became red and swollen. Whenever I poked it, a yellow pus started leaking out. I tried everything we had: ice, meditation, mint leaves, salt water, everything, but nothing was working. Soon, I found myself unable to sleep because of the throbbing in my mouth. So, I did the unthinkable. I told my mother. "Era, Ara!" She began chanting her tribal anthem made for healing. "You are being cursed by societal norms! Get away from me!" I pinched the bridge of my nose, hating myself for even just hoping she'd react normally for once. I was in so much pain that I didn't even want to deal with her antics, so I just left and called Morgan. I expected him to offer to drive me to an ER, but instead, he threatened me. He told me if I didn't call CPS in the next 48 hours, then he would do it himself. "Morgan, please just—" I tried to plead with him, but he hung up. So I resorted to my next best option, my father. I literally hadn't even seen him in 5 years, but I was desperate. Unfortunately, I forgot that anyone crazy enough to be willingly associated with my mother is probably insane. So, when I arrived through the door and saw him passed out on the couch, surrounded by dozens of Blue Moon cans, I couldn't even blame him. I just stole the dollar bills out of his pocket and left. When I got home, I was greeted by my mother's spiritual healing circle friends. "OMG, drink this," one of them said, before handing me a strange herbal concoction that smelled like rotten eggs. "Purge him! Purge him!" another one yelled, while shoving burnt dried sage into my face. I couldn't even think through the pain and just shoved past them to get to my mother. But before I could even say anything, her hand met my face. Smack. "Whatever you want to say, don't. You'll never make it without me." Tears slipped out before I could stop them. I finally caved, left, and called CPS. I thought a social worker would bring me to a shelter, or at least tell my mom to stop hitting me. But no. Instead, she laughed. "So let me get this straight. Your mom is trying to heal you, and now you're upset because your tooth hurts a little?" I swear I thought she was pranking me, but that's when she said, "Call me when you have some real issues, kid," before hanging up the phone. My heart sank to my stomach. I never realized how loud loneliness could get. That's when Morgan called. He asked me why I wasn't home. He has my location. And if I had called CPS yet. I tried to speak, but my throat was locked up. I practically choked on my tears. He didn't say anything, but in the background it sounded like someone was driving. I stayed on the phone because I just didn't want to be alone. Well, that's when it happened. Morgan showed up with his mom to pick me up. She drove me straight to the ER, and my case was so severe that I only waited 20 minutes to be seen. When all was said and done, I thought the worst was behind me. I was even ready to go back home and forgive my mom. I told myself the dental pain had made me spiral, that I had overreacted. But when I got out of the room and went to Morgan's mom, I saw she was in tears. "Honey, I called your mom to tell her where you were." I felt the blood drain from my face. I turned to Morgan, who was completely pale and staring at the ground. She was upset, and the police found her, hanging. My knees buckled to the floor. Morgan held me. The world felt like it was spinning, like it was laughing at me. And for the first time ever, I threw myself a party. A pity party, that is. I didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve to suffer at the hands of others just because I wasn't an adult yet. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to make them pay. But it wasn't so easy. First, Morgan's family took me in temporarily while the state figured out what to do with me. My dad sobered up enough to show up at the funeral, but not enough to take custody. He cried a lot and told me he was sorry, then disappeared again. The autopsy revealed my mom had been mixing her vodka with some kind of homemade herbal concoction. The coroner said it probably made her paranoid and unstable. No, shut. I could have told them that. I spent a few weeks in a group home while they tried to find a foster placement for me. It wasn't as bad as I expected. At least they had running water and actual food. The other kids mostly left me alone after I told them my mom culled herself because I went to the dentist. That tends to shut down conversations pretty quick. Then something weird happened. My mom's sister Susan showed up out of nowhere. I didn't even know she existed. Apparently she and my mom had a falling out years ago when my mom went full crystal healing crazy. Susan is normal, like suspiciously normal. She has a job at an accounting firm, a house with multiple bathrooms, and a cat named Tax Return. She's also single with no kids, which made the whole custody thing surprisingly easy. So now I live with Aunt Susan in her 3-bedroom house with actual electricity and running water. I'm enrolled in a real elevated school, which is terrifying but also kind of exciting. I'm way behind in most subjects, but it turns out reading books for an hour every day made me pretty good at English. Morgan's school is across town, but we still hang out on weekends. Sometimes I feel guilty about my mom. Like maybe if I hadn't gone to the hospital, she'd still be alive. But then I remember the dentist saying I could have died from that infection, and I try not to think about it too much. I'm seeing a therapist now, which is weird but helpful. She says it's not my fault what happened to my mom. She says my mom was sick in a way that herbs and crystals couldn't fix. I'm trying to believe her. I was starting to adjust to my new life with Aunt Susan. It was weird having regular meals and a shower that actually worked. The first week, I must have taken like 5 showers a day just because I could. Susan never said anything about it, just kept buying more shampoo and towels. Sometimes I'd catch her smiling a little when she heard the water running again, like she understood what it meant to me. My new school was a whole different challenge, though. Turns out, reading whatever books I could find isn't exactly a comprehensive education. On my first day, I sat in algebra class staring at the board like it was written in hieroglyphics. The teacher, Mr. Peterson, asked me a question, and I just froze. Some kids laughed. I wanted to disappear. My face burned hot with embarrassment as I mumbled something about not knowing the answer. After class, this girl named Jordan came up to me. She had bright blue hair and more piercings than I could count. Her combat boots made little squeaking noises on the linoleum as she approached. "Don't worry about Peterson," she said. "He's a deek to everyone." She offered to help me catch up during lunch. I was so desperate I actually said yes. Jordan became my first real friend at school. She was smart as H-hole but had this fuck the system attitude that the teachers hated. We'd study together at lunch, and she never made me feel stupid for not knowing basic stuff. She had this way of explaining things that just made sense, breaking down complex problems into pieces I could actually understand. Things at home were stable, I guess. Susan was nice but awkward around me. She'd ask about my day and actually listen, which was new. She cooked real meals and made sure I had everything I needed for school. But sometimes I'd catch her staring at me with this sad look, like she was seeing my mom instead of me. I didn't blame her. Apparently, I have my mom's eyes and the same crooked smile. One night, about a month after moving in, I found her looking through an old photo album. There were pictures of her and my mom as kids, laughing and hugging. They looked so much alike, both with the same wavy brown hair and dimples when they smiled. "We were best friends," she said when she noticed me watching. "Until she met your dad and got into all that alternative lifestyle stuff." She sighed and closed the album. "I tried to help her, you know. After your dad left, I offered to let you both move in here, but she refused. Said I was Tammy Morgan by capitalism or something. That hit me hard. We could have had a normal life all along if my mom hadn't been so stubborn." I went to bed angry that night, feeling cheated out of years of stability. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above my bed, wondering how different my life might have been. The next day at school, I bombed a math test, like completely failed. Mr. Peterson made this big show of handing it back to me, saying maybe I wasn't ready for public education. Jordan flipped him off when he turned around and got detention for it. The big red F on my paper felt like it was mocking me. I was sitting alone at lunch, feeling sorry for myself, when this guy named William sat down across from me. He was in my English class, the only subject where I wasn't completely lost. He had perfectly styled hair and wore polo shirts like they were a religion. "Heard you're living with Susan Winters now," he said, unwrapping his sandwich. I nodded, not really in the mood to talk. "My mom knows her from work, says she's got money." I shrugged. "I guess she has a normal job and a house, if that's what you mean." William leaned forward. "No, like, serious money. My mom says your aunt has a trust fund or something. From your grandparents." This was news to me. Susan lived comfortably but not extravagantly. Her house was nice but not mansion nice. She drove a used Honda. But then again, after living with my mom, my idea of rich might be skewed. My definition of wealth used to be having enough food in the fridge to last the week. After school, I asked Susan about it. She was chopping vegetables for dinner and nearly cut her finger when I brought it up. The non-fay clattered against the cutting board. "Who told you that?" she asked, her voice weirdly tight. "Just some kid at school," I said. "His mom works with you?" Susan sighed and put down the knife. "It's complicated. Yes, our parents left some money. I got my portion when I turned 30. Your mom was supposed to get hers too, but..." She trailed off, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. "But what?" I pressed. "She was not in a good place, using a lot of substances. Our parents put conditions on her inheritance. She had to get clean, get a real job, provide a stable home for you." Susan wouldn't meet my eyes. She never met those conditions. I felt like I'd been punched. "So what happened to her money?" "It's in a trust. For you. When you turn 25. Susan finally looked at me. "I'm the trustee." My head was spinning. All those years of poverty, of no running water, of stealing from my passed-out dad just to eat. And there was money waiting the whole time? Money that could have been ours if my mom had just been normal? "How much?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Susan hesitated. "About 800,000. I actually laughed. It sounded crazy even to my own ears. $800,000. Enough to have changed everything. Enough to have given me a real childhood. Your mom knew," Susan said quietly. "She chose her lifestyle over the money, over providing for you properly." I went to my room and didn't come out for dinner. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times I'd gone hungry or dirty or suck because we couldn't afford basic necessities. All the times my mom had ranted about the evils of capitalism while choosing to keep us in poverty. The irony was bitter in my mouth. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Heard about your trust fund? Want to celebrate? Dad." Great. Somehow my deadbeat father had gotten wind of the money. I ignored the text, but he kept sending more throughout the day. By the time I got home from school, he'd sent 12 messages, each more desperate than the last. The last one just said, "We need to talk about your future son," with $3 sign emojis. I showed Susan the texts. Her face hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. "I'll handle this," she said, taking my phone. She blocked his number and called her lawyer right in front of me, asking about restraining orders. Her voice was calm, but I could see her knuckles turning white as she gripped the phone. That night, there was a knock at the door around midnight. I was still awake, scrolling through social media on the laptop Susan had bought me for school. I heard Susan's bedroom door open, then her footsteps down the hall. I crept to my door and listened, my heart suddenly pounding. "You need to leave, James." Susan's voice was ice cold. My dad. Of course he'd show up, Dorank. "I just want to see my kid," he slurred. "Got a right to see my own kid. You lost that right when you abandoned him years ago." Susan shot back. "The court agrees with me, by the way. Sole custody, remember?" There was a thud, like someone stumbling against the wall. "That money's half mine," my dad growled. "I put up with Diane's crazy A's for years. I deserve something. I'd heard enough." I stormed down the hallway and confronted him myself. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him. Thinner, grayer, with bloodshot eyes and a scraggly beard. The smell of cheap whiskey radiated from him like a force field. "You deserve nothing," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "You left me with her. You knew how she was, and you left me there." He had the audacity to look hurt. "Kid, you don't understand? Get out," I cut him off. "Get out, or we're calling the cops." Susan already had her phone in hand. Dad looked between us, then spat on the floor and stumbled back out the door. Susan locked it behind him and put the chain on. I could hear him cursing as he walked away, his voice fading into the night. "I'm sorry," she said, putting an arm around my shoulders. I should have expected he'd find out somehow. I shrugged her off. "It's fine. Not the first time he's disappointed me." The next morning, Susan took me to her lawyer's office. Mr. Bradshaw was an older guy with kind eyes and a bow tie. His office smelled like leather and coffee. He explained the trust to me in simple terms. The money was mine when I turned 25, but Susan could release funds earlier for education, healthcare, or housing. My parents couldn't touch it, no matter what. "What about now?" I asked. "Can I use it for anything?" Mr. Bradshaw smiled. "That's up to your trustee. Susan has discretion for your benefit." I looked at Susan. "Could I use some to help Morgan? His mom's been struggling since she took me in that time." Susan seemed surprised, but nodded. "We could set up a scholarship fund for him, for college. That would be educational." For the first time since learning about the money, I felt good about it. Maybe I could use it to actually help people who deserved it. People who had been kind to me when I had nothing. But things got complicated fast. Somehow, word about my inheritance spread through school. Suddenly, people who'd never given me the time of day were sitting with me at lunch, inviting me to parties, offering to help with homework. It was obvious and pathetic. A girl who had literally called me dumpster boy 2 weeks earlier was now asking if I wanted to study together. Jordan was the only one who didn't change. "These vultures are ridiculous," she said, glaring at a group of girls who'd just invited me to a weekend beach trip. "Yesterday, Jessica called you homeless kid behind your back. Now she's your best friend." I appreciated Jordan's honesty, but the attention wasn't all bad. For once in my life, I wasn't invisible. I got invited to my first real party that weekend at some rich kid's house whose parents were out of town. The house was in one of those neighborhoods where all the lawns looked like they were trimmed with nail scissors. Susan was hesitant, but eventually agreed I could go. "Just be home by midnight and no drinking," she said. I promised, already knowing I'd probably break at least one of those rules. The party was in this massive house with a pool and everything. The moment I walked in, people greeted me like we were old friends. Someone handed me a red cup of something that definitely wasn't just soda. I took it, thinking about how my mom would have a meltdown seeing me with a poison commercial beverage, let alone alcohol. William found me by the pool. "Dude, you're like a celebrity now," he laughed, clinking his cup against mine. "How's it feel to be rich?" "I'm not rich," I corrected him. "I can't touch the money for years." He waved that off. "But you will be. That's what matters." He leaned closer. "Hey, some of us are going in on a beach house rental for spring break. It's like $500 each. You in?" Before I could answer, Jordan appeared at my side. "He's busy during spring break," she said, glaring at William. "Come on, I need to show you something," she added, pulling me away. She led me to a quieter part of the yard. "That guy's a leech," she said. "They all are. They just want your money." I was feeling the alcohol by then and got defensive. Maybe they just like me. "Did you ever think of that?" Jordan rolled her eyes. "Yeah, they suddenly like you right after finding out you're getting a trust fund. Total coincidence. You're just jealous," I snapped, immediately regretting it. The words hung in the air between us like poison. Her face fell. "Wow. Okay. Guess the money's already changing you." She walked away, leaving me feeling like crap. I drank more after that, trying to drown out the guilt. By midnight, I was definitely drunk and had completely forgotten my promise to Susan. I was sitting by the pool with my feet in the water when my phone rang. It was Susan. I ignored it, watching the screen light up and then fade to black. A few minutes later, William sat down next to me. "Dude, your dad's here." My head snapped up. "What?" "Some old guy at the front door saying he's your dad. Looks kind of rough." I stumbled to my feet and made my way to the front of the house. Sure enough, there was my dad, arguing with the kid whose house it was. He was swaying slightly, his eyes unfocused. "I'm just here for my son," he was saying, trying to push his way inside. "Dad, what the hull?" I called out, drawing his attention. His face lit up when he saw me. "There's my boy. Come on, we're going for a drive." I could smell the alcohol on him from 10 feet away. "You're Dorank. How did you even find me?" He tapped his phone. "Facebook, kid. You should check your privacy settings." He grabbed my arm. Come on, we need to talk about your future. I pulled away. I'm not going anywhere with you. His face darkened. Don't be difficult. We're family, right? Family helps each other out. Family doesn't abandon each other. I shut back. That's when he got nasty. Your mom called herself because of you know that? She called me that night, crying about how you'd betrayed her, going to a hospital behind her back. The words hit me like a physical blow. I've been trying not to think about that possibility for months. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. That's not true, I said, but my voice wavered. She said she couldn't live with the shame of raising such an ungrateful child. He continued, twisting the knoff. Now you're living it up with your rich aunt while your mom is in the ground. I don't remember deciding to hit him. I just remember the shock on his face as my fist connected with his jaw and the pain shooting through my hand afterward. He stumbled backward, then lunged at me with a roar. The next few minutes were chaos. We were on the ground, him trying to pin me down, me fighting to get away. Kids were screaming and filming with their phones. Someone called the cops. I managed to knee him in the groin and scramble away just as police sirens became audible in the distance. Dad staggered to his feet, pointing at me. This isn't over, he slurred, then took off running down the street. I sat on the curb, shaking, as the police arrived. They took statements from everyone, including me. I called Susan, who showed up 20 minutes later looking terrified. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I'm sorry, I kept saying. I'm so sorry. The police wanted to file charges against my dad for assaulting a minor, but I just wanted it to be over. Susan insisted, though, and by the end of the night, there was a formal complaint and a temporary restraining order in process. The ride home was silent. I expected Susan to yell at me for breaking my promises, for getting into a fight, for everything. Instead, she just asked if I was hurt and if I needed anything. Why aren't you mad? I finally asked as we pulled into the driveway. She turned off the engine and sighed. Because I'm partly responsible. I should have anticipated James would react this way to the news about the trust. I should have protected you better. It's not your job to protect me from him, I said. Yes, it is. Her voice was firm. That's exactly what it is. I'm your guardian now, and I failed tonight. I didn't know what to say to that. No adult had ever taken responsibility for my safety before. The next morning, my hand was swollen and my head was pounding from the hangover. Susan brought me coffee and toast, along with some ibuprofen. She sat on the edge of my bed while I ate. We need to talk about what your father said, she began carefully. About your mom. I stared at my toast. He was just trying to hurt me. Yes, but, Susan hesitated. I know you blame yourself sometimes. For what happened to her. I couldn't look at her. If you hadn't gone to the hospital, you might have died. She cut me off. That infection was serious, and what happened to your mom wasn't because of you. It was because she was suck, in ways that had nothing to do with you. But she did it right after finding out where I was, I argued. Susan took a deep breath. Your mom had attempted suicide before. Did you know that? I looked up, shocked. What? When? 3 times that I know of. Once in elevated school, once in her 20s, and once right after your dad left. Susan's eyes were sad. She had severe mental health issues that she refused to treat properly. She self-medicated with alcohol and drugs. What happened that night? It was tragic, but it wasn't your fault. It was the culmination of years of untreated illness. I sat with that information for a while. It changed everything and nothing at the same time. My mom had been even sicker than I realized, and no amount of herbs or crystals or positive energy could have fixed that. I wish I'd known, I finally said. She didn't want you to know. She wanted to be your hero. Susan squeezed my hand. In her own way, she loved you very much. She just wasn't capable of being the parent you deserved. We spent the rest of the day talking about my mom. The good parts I remembered, the bad parts I'd tried to forget, and all the complicated parts in between. For the first time, I felt like I was seeing her as a whole person, not just as my crazy mom who'd failed me. On Monday, I went back to school and found Jordan at her locker. I'm sorry, I said immediately. You were right. I was being an idiot. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, you were, but I forgive you. She closed her locker. Heard about what happened with your dad. You okay? I shrugged. Getting there. Good. She punched my arm lightly. Because I need help with the English essay, and you're the only one in this school who actually reads books. I smiled, feeling something close to normal for the first time in months. Maybe I wasn't okay yet, but I was getting there, one day at a time. Jordan and I fell into a routine after that. We'd study together after school, me helping her with English, her helping me catch up on everything else. The whole trust fund drama died down after a few weeks. Turns out, elevated school attention spans are pretty short, especially when the rich kid doesn't actually have access to any money. Most of the fake friends drifted away once they realized I wasn't buying a yacht or whatever they expected. My dad got arrested 2 weeks after the party incident, not for attacking me, but for a DUI. He wrapped his car around a telephone pole. Nobody was hurt except his pride and his already crappy car. He got 30 days in county jail plus probation. The judge also made the restraining order permanent, which was a relief. I didn't need that drama in my life. Susan suggested I start seeing a therapist again. At first, I was against it, but after having nightmares about my mom for 3 straight nights, I gave in. Dr. Karen was different from my first therapist. She didn't try to tell me how to feel about my mom. Instead, she just listened and asked questions that made me think. Your mother made choices, she told me during our 3rd session. Some of those choices hurt you. It's okay to be angry about that. I didn't know how much I needed to hear those words until she said them. I've been carrying around this guilt, like I wasn't allowed to be mad at someone who called herself. But Dr. Karen helped me understand that my feelings were valid, even the messy, complicated ones. School was getting better too. I was catching up in most subjects, even math. Mr. Peterson was still a DAC, but I stopped caring what he thought. My first report card showed mostly C's with a B in English. Susan put it on the fridge like I'd won a Nobel Prize or something. It was embarrassing, but also kind of nice. Then one day, Morgan called me out of the blue. We hadn't talked much since I moved in with Susan. He was busy with school and work, and I was trying to adjust to my new life. But his call changed everything. "Dude, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice weirdly tense. "Someone's been asking questions about you at the pool." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions? Like where you live now, what school you go to?" "Creepy stuff." He paused. "It was one of your mom's weird friends, the one with the gray dreads." I immediately knew who he meant. Elizabeth, my mom's spiritual guide, or whatever she called herself. She'd been at our house that day when everything went down, one of the ones trying to force that nasty herbal crap on me. "What did you tell her?" I asked, already feeling anxious. "Nothing, obviously. I told her to fuck off." Morgan sounded offended I'd even ask. But she kept hanging around. Manager finally had to threaten to call the cops. I thanked him for the warning and hung up. I told Susan about it that night over dinner. She frowned, putting down her fork. "That's concerning," she said carefully. "Did Morgan say what she wanted?" I shook my head. "Just asking questions about me. It's probably nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The next day, I was walking home from school when a hit-up van pulled alongside me. The window rolled down, and there was Elizabeth, looking exactly as I remembered. Gray dreads, too many scarves, eyes slightly unfocused. "Child of Diane," she called out, like that was my name. "We need to speak with you." I kept walking, picking up my pace. "Not interested. Your mother left something for you," she persisted, the van creeping alongside me. "Something important." That made me pause. "What are you talking about?" Elizabeth smiled, revealing teeth stained from years of herbal teas. "Come with me, and I'll show you." Every stranger danger alarm in my head was blaring. "Yeah, no thanks. If she left something for me, you can drop it off with my aunt." Elizabeth's face darkened. "Your aunt is poisoning your spirit with her materialistic ways. Diane would be devastated to see what's become of you." That pissed me off. "My mom would be devastated to know I finally have running water and enough food? That I'm actually getting an education? Fuck off, Elizabeth." I pulled out my phone and started recording her. That did the trick. She cursed at me, called me a lost soul, and drove off. I sent the video to Susan right away, along with the van's license plate. Susan was furious. She called the police, who took a report and said they'd keep an eye out for the van. They also advised us to be vigilant and document any further contact. "I don't like this," Susan said, pacing around the kitchen. "These people are unpredictable. Your mom's death might have destabilized their whole group." I hadn't thought about that. My mom had been a big deal in her little circle of crystal-loving weirdos. With her gone, maybe the dynamic had shifted. Maybe Elizabeth was trying to establish herself as the new leader or something. For the next week, Susan drove me to and from school. I felt like a little kid, but I was also grateful. Something about Elizabeth's approach had seriously creeped me out. The way she said my mom had left something for me, it stuck in my head. What if she was telling the truth? What if my mom had left something for me? The thought nagged at me, even though I tried to dismiss it. My mom hadn't exactly been the type to plan ahead. She lived in the moment, for better or worse. Usually worse. But the curiosity was eating at me. So one day after school, I did something stupid. I went to our old house. Susan thought I was studying with Jordan, and Jordan thought I was at a dentist appointment. The perfect creme. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. Small, run down, with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. But there was a "for rent" sign in the front yard now. I walked up to the door, not sure what I was expecting. It was locked, obviously. I peered through the windows, but the place looked empty. I was about to leave when I heard a voice behind me. "I knew you'd come back eventually." I spun around to find Joseph, our old neighbor, standing there with his ever-present cigarette. He was in his 60s, with a permanent tan from working outdoors and eyes that always looked slightly suspicious. "Hey, Joseph," I said, trying to act casual. "Just checking on the old place." He grunted, taking a drag from his cigarette. "Those hippie friends of your mom's were here last week, making a racket, digging around in the yard at night." That got my attention. "Digging in the yard? Where?" Joseph pointed to the side of the house where my mom used to grow her medicinal herbs. "Over there, by that dead rosemary bush." I thanked him and walked around to check it out. Sure enough, the ground had been disturbed. There was a shallow hole, maybe a foot deep, partially filled back in. I looked around to make sure no one was watching, then started digging with my hands. About 6 inches down, my fingers hit something solid. A metal box, about the size of a thick book. I pulled it out, brushing off the dirt. It was an old cookie tin, the kind that usually contains sewing supplies in normal homes. But my mom had never been normal. I opened it right there, too curious to wait. Inside was a notebook, my mom's journal by the look of it, and a small cloth bag. I opened the bag first and nearly dropped it. It contained a roll of cash, at least a few $100s. There was also a small key with a tag that read, "Storage Unit Number 17, Access Storage." I stuffed everything back in the tin and hurried away from the house. My heart was pounding. What had my mom been hiding? And why were Elizabeth and the others looking for it? I didn't go straight home. Instead, I went to the public library, found a quiet corner, and opened the journal. Most of it was typical mom stuff. Rants about the government, recipes for herbal remedies, sketches of crystal formations. But the last few entries were different. "They're not what they seem," one entry read. "E and the others, using the group for their own gain. The ceremonies, the healings, it's all a front. I've seen what they're really doing with the money." My blood ran cold. The next entry was dated a week before she died. Found proof today. Records of everything. They'll call me if they know I know. Have to hide it all. For my son. He deserves the truth, even if he hates me for being part of it for so long. The final entry was from the day she died. He's gone to the hospital. I'm scared of what E and the others will do when they find out I've discovered their operation. I've moved everything to the storage unit. The truth, the evidence, all of it. If anything happens to me, I hope he finds this. I hope he understands someday that I did love him. In my broken way, I closed the journal, my hands shaking. This changed everything. My mom hadn't called herself because I went to the hospital. She called herself because she was afraid of Elizabeth and the others. Because she discovered something they didn't want found. I called Jordan right away. I need your help, I said, my voice tight. Can you meet me at Access Storage on Main Street? She didn't ask questions, just said she'd be there in 20 minutes. That's why Jordan was my best friend. The storage facility was one of those places with rows of identical metal doors and a keypad entry gate. Jordan picked me up from the library, and I filled her in on everything during the drive. This is some serious shat, she said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Shouldn't we tell your aunt? Or the police? Not yet, I said. Not until I know what's in that storage unit. We pulled up to the facility, and I punched in the gate code from the tag on the key. The gate slid open with a metallic groan. Unit 17 was near the back, a small 5x5 unit with a padlock. The key fit perfectly. I pulled the door up, revealing a space packed with boxes and file folders. There was a folding table set up in the middle with what looked like financial records spread across it. Holy shit, Jordan whispered, stepping inside. Your mom was like a conspiracy theorist or something. I picked up one of the folders. Inside were bank statements, but not for any account I recognized. The name on the account was Natural Healing Collective, and the balance was over $80,000. This must be the group's money, I said, flipping through the statements. Look at these withdrawals. $2,000 here, $3,000 there, all in cash. Jordan was looking through another box. Dude, there's like a ton of cash in here. And, are these doc drugs? She held up a baggie of what looked like pills. Not the homemade herbal kind, but pharmaceutical pills in blister packs. I think your mom's healing circle was dealing prescription drugs, Jordan said, her eyes wide. Like, selling them to people who couldn't get them legally. It made a suck kind of sense. All those healing ceremonies where people would come out looking dazed and happy. I'd always assumed it was just the power of suggestion, or maybe some of my mom's stronger herbal concoctions. But prescription drugs? That was a whole different level. We need to get out of here, I said suddenly, feeling exposed. Take pictures of everything, but we need to go. Now. We spent 15 minutes photographing everything. The bank statements, the Darg stash, the cash, all of it. Then we locked the unit back up and got the HL out of there. I called Susan from Jordan's car and told her everything. She freaked out, obviously, but in a controlled way. She told us to come straight home and not to stop anywhere. When we got to Susan's house, there was a police car in the driveway. My heart sank. Was I in trouble for breaking into my old house? But Susan met us at the door looking grim. Elizabeth and 2 others were just here looking for you, she said, her voice tight. They got aggressive when I wouldn't tell them where you were. The neighbors called the police. The officer took our statements and looked at the photos on my phone. His expression grew increasingly serious. This is evidence of a significant operation, he said finally. Prescription DRG trafficking is a serious offense. I'm going to need to call this in. The next few days were a blur of police interviews and legal discussions. Turns out my mom had stumbled onto a DRG operation. Elizabeth and the others had been using the healing circle as a front to sell prescription DRGs to desperate people who couldn't afford healthcare. They'd been making thousands of dollars a month, and my mom had been an unwitting part of it until she figured it out. The police raided the storage unit and found enough evidence to arrest Elizabeth and 5 others. They also found over $25,000 in cash, which was seized as evidence. The journal proved my mom had been planning to expose the operation before she died. She was trying to protect you, Susan said when it was all over. In her own way, she was finally trying to do the right thing. It didn't bring my mom back, and it didn't erase the years of neglect, but it did help me understand her a little better. She'd been lost, manipulated by people she trusted, and in the end, she'd tried to make it right. A month later, I got a letter from the district attorney. Because of my mom's evidence, they'd been able to build a solid case. Elizabeth and the others were facing serious jail time. And because my mom had technically been a whistleblower, albeit posthumously, the trust fund would be supplemented with a portion of the recovered assets after the trial concluded. It's not about the money, Susan said with a small smile, but it will help secure your future. It wasn't about the money, though. It was about finally understanding the truth. My mom hadn't been a perfect parent, far from it. But in her final days, she tried to protect me the only way she knew how. I still see Dr. Karen every week. I'm still catching up in school. Jordan and I are still best friends. Maybe more than friends now, though we're taking it slow. Morgan comes over sometimes, and we play video games like normal teenagers. My life isn't perfect. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still get angry thinking about all the years I spent hungry and dirty and scared. But I'm learning to accept that my story is complicated, just like my mom was. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I have a future that's mine to shape. No one else's expectations, no one else's craziness. Just me, figuring it out one day at a time.